Welcome back to the Bullpen podcast, where we have real conversations with local business leaders about strategies, decisions, and mindsets that drive success. Today, we're joined by Brandon Vannelli, president and co-owner of Norco Precision, a Twin Cities-based sheet metal manufacturer that's built its reputation on speed, precision, and a quality-first approach. Since acquiring the business in 2023, Brandon and his partners have led Norco through an exciting phase of growth and innovation. We'll dig into all of that and more. Brandon, welcome to the Bullpen. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Drew. Happy to be here.
Let's jump right in. Let's talk about your start with Norco. And so you and your co-owners acquired Norco Precision just a couple of years ago. What drew you to the company, and what kind of gave you the confidence to take on acquiring a company?
Yeah, so the business was founded in 2003 by a husband and wife that had spent, at least the husband had spent his career in metal fabrication and had an opportunity to spin off and start his own business. So it had some really good foundation that when we had found the business, we were excited about. They had a good existing customer base here in the Twin Cities, and we were looking to grow that. They were looking to retire. They offered a transition period that made sense to us. And at the time, they just seemed like really good people that spent a long time building their business, and they wanted it to go to someone who also wanted to care about it just as much as they did.
Yeah, that's great. So in those first few months, what was ownership like kind of in that first, once you kind of signed on the line and that got into that transition period? Were there any surprises, lessons, or anything that kind of shaped how you're leading the organization today?
Certainly a lot was learned. I say this a lot, and I didn't know what I didn't know. And that goes with a lot of things in life when you're trying something new. It was mostly just taking it in stride, asking a lot of questions. Major surprises, I think that the adventure was full of just general surprises, right? Like, well, this is how you do this. Or, just as simple as like, if you haven't spent a lot of time in QuickBooks, like that's the software used for accounting. It's not that easy to learn. Maybe that was a surprise, right? I expected some of that stuff to maybe be a little easier. So, when we jumped into this venture, it was something that I felt confident that I wanted to do. I was really happy in the career I was in with a background in engineering, had a little opportunity to do some leadership. I was just looking for the next step, a little bit more of a challenge. And it certainly has been that. But in the first year, I spent like the majority of my time asking all the questions I can of the previous owner, the employees who have spent many years within this business, and just taking it all in. We didn't make any major changes in the first year. We did have to relocate the business, but we didn't do anything that would like reshape what our core competencies were. I just wanted to understand it fully. And now in the last 12 months, we have spent more time not changing things, but knowing where the important things were to spend our time to make the biggest impact, whether that's equipment or people or processes, a little bit of all of those, but like which one's the most important with the time we have available and the resources, for at least monetary resources that we have available to us.
Yeah, you touched on just the core competencies of Norco and to kind of making sure that all of that stays established, especially through that early transition period and onwards too. But Norco's always been known for their quality and responsiveness. How do you maintain those strengths while also growing and expanding capabilities on the other end?
So one of those things currently relies heavily on myself, and the other things are largely on the folks that we have in the shop. We're a pretty small business. Right now, we only have 5 employees full-time. That does not include my 2 business partners who currently have jobs outside of the business. They're with intentions of joining full-time eventually when that makes sense. But responsiveness is depending on how thin I stretch myself with what is going on any given week or any given month. But we value it immensely. A lot of our customers are looking for quick turnaround on quotes, certainly quick turnarounds on their parts within reason, but they're looking for someone to get back to them as soon as possible, whether we can do it and for what price. And so we try our best to be doing quotes within a day. That's kind of what we tell our customers. And then the quality thing is, it's always a thing we're going to bump into. As we try to put more production through the shop, we're moving too fast or whatever it may be. So we've actually spent a lot of time in the last 3 to 4 months implementing more quality processes, more formal ones, which is very common in our industry. But at a shop our size, we did a lot of in-process quality checks. It was up to everybody in the shop to ensure that the quality was being met. That only goes so far when you start asking more of people. So we've implemented more formal quality processes. We do not yet have a dedicated quality department or a quality person, but we're working towards that. And at some point there will be a department, quote unquote, a department, at least one person whose time is dedicated towards checking material certifications, measuring parts, ensuring high quality finishes so that it's meeting our customers' needs.
Yeah, and it seems like, if you have a trusted staff and people that have worked there such a long time, like you said, all that stuff kind of builds on one another where you say, okay, these people have the experience to do the quality kind of as they're going through to say, all right, I know if this looks good or not. And especially when adding the leadership to that existing workforce that you have at Norco, transitioning the leadership can be tricky for any company too. How did you and your partners kind of earn that trust and build the buy-in with that existing Norco team?
Yeah, it was certainly something that was super important and on top of my mind when we took over, the operations of the business. The previous owner stayed on for about 15 months. Part of the business transaction was he was obligated to 12 months to stick around. And various reasons why that was valuable, frankly, just asking as many questions as we could, learning maybe how they ran things, whether they were right or wrong, just kind of understanding the dynamic and relationship. But it was something that we knew that if we showed the current employees as well as the previous owner, but at some point we knew he was going to exit, that we cared and we actually wanted to do right by them and grow the business in a good way and not necessarily disregarding their work-life balance or anything or their safety or anything like that. So like I mentioned earlier, I asked a lot of questions and I took what they said into serious consideration. It wasn't just like, oh, I asked to ask and then just like forget about what they said. There was things that we quickly realized that maybe the employees were asking for, whether it was just simple PPE or a small hand tool that would make their job easier. Sure, there's always requests for like, hey, if we bought this big fancy piece of equipment, it would solve this problem. That stuff has to be taken with a little bit more like, okay, assessment maybe. But when we were in the shop in the first couple months, working late, coming in early, putting in the extra hours, it went a really long way. And we still do a lot of that, but it went a really long way with the current employees, two of which had been with the business for almost 20 years. So, right, that's their career. It's their life. And so to have them now have a new, I'll call it boss or a leader, was probably a little scary. And so I wanted to make sure that they felt confident, maybe not that I was going to solve all their problems, but I was at least willing to learn and go in the direction that, at least they advised to within reason. Like I mentioned, if they've spent 20 years in the business, they sure know it very, very well. And so I didn't take that for granted.
Yeah, it's can be scary from both sides, and kind of not to just solve all their problems, but to work with them to solve all the problems that you can in the business and their roles. And I think probably as an engineer, you're very used to finding different ways to solve problems. I'm working in both engineering and obviously a pretty leadership focused role right now. How do you approach developing a culture that kind of balances that precision and innovation?
Yeah, culture is something that we talk about a lot in our ownership group. We're actually currently working on nailing down some core values of the business, things that we can stand on, things that we feel strongly about as leaders, also get some buy-in from our current employees. It's not simple, and I'm no expert, but I spend a lot of time listening to other business leaders, whether it's podcasts or reading books, and look at it like I share with my team. We have a weekly meeting every Monday morning. We would like to maybe do that on more regular cadences. I lead with my best foot forward. I often share with them how you do anything is how you do everything. Not a Brandon quote, took it from someone else, but it's just as simple as, picking up the paper towels that didn't make it in the trash can. And so the premise of that is if we try to be excellent at everything we do, even the small stuff, it'll carry on throughout our lives and other people will see you do it as well. So, I mean, we're a big team and that's a big part of it. We're all here trying to do the same common goal. And if we can help each other do it, it's only for the greater good, supporting our customers and what they're trying to achieve. I'm early in my leadership career. I had a couple years experience at my other job leading a small team of people. It's actually bigger than this team, I guess, technically, but I'm still learning every single day. And I certainly take words of wisdom from other leaders that I respect, both locally and social media presences or whatever that is, and try to implement those things that I see valuable in our business. And it's going to take time and not everybody's going to be on board with it. And that's okay. They'll eventually work their way out of our business if they don't really align with our values. Not that we're going to give them the boot, but if they're surrounded by enough people that are willing to do the hard thing, the uncomfortable thing, the out of norm, eventually they'll just see themselves as the outlier. And so that's kind of the way I've been trying to tackle it.
Yeah, and exactly. I mean, podcasts like this, hopefully, to help share a lot of business ideas and help leaders succeed in any avenues. I love the sentiment, kind of in keeping with what we're doing here too. But kind of in line with what you're doing with creating your kind of a lot of the core values of the company. What's one practice or principle you really rely on to keep your team focused and motivated during, I guess, busy transition periods or just busy periods in general of a lot of business going on at once?
Something that I've found value in here in the last 6 months as we've tried to grow, as we have grown the business and done more work than this team has ever done, is just communication. Let them know what's coming, let them know what we're working on. Obviously, within reason, there's certain things that maybe aren't valuable to them to know about, but I try to be open and let them know what is the trajectory, what is our maybe there's not a quote unquote specific end goal, but like what are we striving towards? Obviously, we want to provide good quality parts to our customers at a reasonable lead time. But like, how does that look from our perspective? What kind of things are we working on? The quality systems that I brought up earlier are part of that. If we're not delivering quality parts, we may lose a customer or we may lose some business with that customer. So just sharing with them, hey, we're going to implement a quality system. Well, they look at it like, well, that's another step or that's more work. It's like, well, when you explain to them the value that provides for our customers and for themselves, if we do quality checks, we might not have to rework parts. Well, rework parts aren't very fun for anybody, right? The customer doesn't appreciate that. The guys have to make the part again in the shop. That's never really fun. Frankly, just, I don't want to say oversharing, but definitely making sure that the direct labor part of the company is closely in tune with what we're trying to do. It's really easy for them to just come in and not be involved in that conversation and just do their job. But I think when they have more information, they have more buy-in. If they have a clear understanding of what we're trying to do and how we're going to do it, they're going to carry that into the work, with them every single day.
Yeah, and kind of in keeping with that same, I guess, mindset, a lot of business owners talk about strategic growth. Obviously, that can mean transparency. That can mean a lot of like quality control process. It can be very tangible, very intangible. But what really does that mean to you? And kind of how, additionally, on top of kind of what you were already talking about a little bit, I mean, just how in whole are you kind of putting that into practice at Norco?
We quickly realized about 6 months in that there was a lot of opportunity for growth with our current customer base. Even 2 years to date, in about a month, we probably still 80% of the total customer base is still like legacy customers that are from the last 5 to 20 years. And we've grown the business. And so what I realized last year is we started asking questions to our customers. What are we not making for you today? What are we not doing well for you today? What services could we provide that would help you be more successful? And I quickly realized there's a whole lot of business out there with our current clients, which is the easiest way to grow that was untapped. Just as simple as maybe saying yes to sending parts out to be powder coated or doing some welding in-house that we maybe previously said no to, even though we have a welder. It has been a very easy way to grow. And I guess like you could consider that strategic because growing with your current customers is certainly a strategy. And then outside of that, networking has been a huge thing for us. We have done some traditional, I'll say, sales and marketing efforts, but in the first 2 years, the most impactful has been, frankly, doing things like this. Maybe not a podcast, but just having conversations, sharing with others what we're working on, really with no premise of like hoping for business, more so just like because it's what I'm doing now and it's exciting for us. And it's been surprising how many people have reached out and been like, hey, I've got this project or I work for a company that, could be a customer for years, can you share your contact information? And so when it comes to like full strategic growth plan, we are doing what we think works for now and then ready to add things on top of that as we go, whether that's social media marketing or paid ads, those kinds of things. But right now we are busy enough that I don't need to be doing more of that. We're ready to add some equipment, we're ready to add people, and then get to like that next level of like, okay, now we can drive more work into the shop. But right now we're running pretty heavily at or over capacity.
You talked about how important OEM partnerships are for your business. What's kind of key to building lasting relationships in that B2B manufacturing space like yours?
Yeah, basically all of our business is B2B. So it is a little different. Be posting on Instagram isn't maybe a direct line to one of our customers. It might be a direct line to somebody at a company that could be a customer of ours. It's taken some learning and understanding, but the big thing that we see is some of the things you had asked about earlier, responsiveness. We have customers that if I can get them a quote back within a couple hours, they'll send a purchase order. They're just looking for the first person that can get them a reasonable price. And we know that a lot of our customers, almost all, work with multiple vendors. It's very understandable. There's no reason to have all your eggs in one basket if you don't need to. And there's other customers that like very much value price. You can get the quote back in a couple days, but you have to be the lowest or you have to be very competitive. So understanding what their pain points are or what their goals are for the business has been a huge one. And then just being there for them in general. When we have that rework situation inevitably where we inadvertently made a part incorrectly, getting that problem solved in the quickest and easiest way possible for the customer goes a long ways. And we hear that from them. We went through a stint when we went through our move last year that we had some rework with one customer specifically. And I had a candid conversation with their quality manager and they're like, we obviously don't want bad parts because that causes work on our end. But when you guys fix it in a day or two with one email response, yep, we'll get it done. And then it just shows up is far less painful than the experience they have with some other vendors. So of course, our goal is to have zero or very little rework, but it's how we treat those situations that is very impactful in the end. So those are things that I'm often thinking about when we're working with these, I'll say B2B or larger customers, because it's a business after all. We're not just building a relationship with one person. We might be working with owners, we might be working with purchasing managers, we might be working with engineers, and it all depends on just who's responsible for the metal projects within that business. And we treat each one of those just a little differently, just based on what they're looking for out of this relationship.
What's one decision or shift that's had one of the biggest positive impacts you think on the company's direction?
I think listening to the employees has been very impactful. I think the previous ownership, not that they didn't do that, but they were happy with where they were. They didn't really want to buy any major pieces of equipment. They didn't really want to make any major investments, whether that's into facilities or whatnot. And as I started peeling back the onion, there was a lot of small wins that increased morale within the workforce big time. And that might be just as simple as like having their favorite coffee in the break room or replacing an old outdated tool that's just worn out. And coming into the business as a new face, an untrusted face, it made, I think, as an opinion, the biggest impact in getting everyone on board with what we were trying to do. Because with growing the business, you can't always throw people at growth immediately. Usually by the time you hire someone, you needed them a while ago. And that's just the nature of business. You usually try to not overstaff because God forbid, you have to let people off or lay them off. And I don't want to be in that position if we don't have to, forbearing anything out of our control. But if long as it is within my control, I want to make sure that, when someone gets hired on here, they feel like they have a place that they can be for a long time. So just building that trust has been super impactful and super important. And that will always be that way. That might not be the single most important thing forever. It will always be something we think is important. There'll be bigger decisions that maybe trump that one, whether it's better facilities, better lighting, things that are maybe more monetary. I want to build a relationship with all of our employees, whether we have 5 people or 50 or 150. I think that's super important.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, yeah, just like you've said too, just like listening and understanding who you're working with is probably one of the best tactics to good leadership. I'm kind of looking back over your last 2 years and maybe even beyond, but what advice would you give to other entrepreneurs thinking about taking that leap into ownership through acquisition?
Ask a lot of questions and not just within the business you're maybe looking into. Ask your peers, ask your friend's dad that might own a business. Sit down and have coffee with somebody. They're going to provide you a lot in that 30-minute conversation that you might not know hopping into this. And I said it earlier, but we didn't know. I certainly had some of those conversations, but I felt a lot better after I had some of them. People are often willing to share much more than you think if you're just willing to ask. And that still holds true. In the last 2 years, I've had more and more of those conversations, whether it's with other shop owners or competitive shop owners, to be honest with you. I mean, we've met some folks that are excited to talk about what they do, even if we are maybe competing for business. Now, they're not going to show me their customer list. That's not what I'm asking for. But like, what software do you use? Or what equipment supplier or local vendors do you like to use? That's not going to change whether or not we win the work or they win the work. It's frankly just going to help all of us be better at what we do. Now, if they have some secret sauce, they're probably not going to share that. But often, if they're in the industry or in a related industry, they're happy and excited to see somebody taking on a new venture and grow a business and just generally be better, make a better life for their employees, make a better life for themselves as a society. We all help each other be better humans. And so that's been really cool. And then I would encourage anyone to reach out to myself if they're interested in anything in the manufacturing space. I'm only 2 years into this, so I can't promise any sort of revolutionary advice, but I like having these conversations, and I hope that I can provide value to someone, and I almost always can find value in something that they're willing to share as well, even if it's not in a related industry.
Yeah, that's great. It just seems, yeah, the nature of leadership and even just like this podcast too. Let's just ask questions and see what you might find to get some good advice or some valuable input on just about anything. Brandon, thanks so much for joining us today on the Bullpen and sharing your story. It's really inspiring to see just how that thoughtful leadership, asking questions, transparency, and so forth, can really drive growth in manufacturing. For those listening, check out Norco Precision and norcoprecision.com to learn more about the work Brandon and his team are doing right here in the Twin Cities. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to follow the Bullpen podcast for more insights from local business leaders who are redefining what success looks like. Until next time, thanks for joining the Bullpen.